I remember growing up, my grandpa would always play guitar. Every time I went over there, he would bust out his guitar and play some old cowboy tunes. And he did that and played guitar right up until the time he died. And I also remember, as far back as my mind will go, he always had arthritis in his hands, particularly in the first joint of each knuckle on his fingers. And he didn't let that slow him down. One thing that he did to kind of combat that, or make it a little bit easier on himself, would be to use a strap on the guitar and lift it up higher so he could play the guitar. And I wanted to make this video because I know a lot of you out there struggle with wanting to play the guitar, or wanting to even get in to start playing the guitar because you have arthritis in your hands, or you have some other kind of pain that's really problematic for you. And the good news is there are things that you can do about this as we get older. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, Nate, you're a pretty young guy. What do you know about arthritis in your hands and things like that? Well, believe it or not, I have quite a bit of arthritis in this finger, my first index finger, the knuckle there, mostly from jamming it super bad playing football when I was younger. And the older I get, the more it bothers me. So I have a lot of sympathy for people that are dealing with this or other kind of chronic pain. And it's important for me to encourage you and for you to realize that you may not be as young as you used to, but there are things you can do to still make playing the guitar a really enjoyable thing to you. And a lot of people don't realize this, but many of the members in the Guitario members area are 60 plus, even a lot of people into their 70s and 80s. And some of those guys are either just getting back into playing guitar, or maybe even been playing for a long time, but some of them are just starting out. So it's important that you realize that you can do this. You may have to adjust things and tweak some things and attack things a little bit differently, but you can do it. So let's go inside, get out of the cold, and talk about some ways to deal with this. All right, the first little category I want to go through is warming up and stretching. And I am not a doctor or a physiotherapist, so I'm not going to get into any kind of pain diagnosis or anything like that. But I am going to give you some tips, to just keep in mind as you start your practice session. And one thing to kind of consider before you even get into this is what you put in your body. How much water you drink, how much alcohol or coffee you drink. Those things can dry you out. And, any anti-inflammatories that you might be taking that could help as well. Practice in a warmer environment. I was just outside for the beginning of this video and it was cold. So taking some time to just get my hands warmed back up and acclimated can go a long way. And I've even heard of people that have arthritis running their hands under warm water just to get the blood flowing and get things a little bit more limbered up. So consider that. Okay, this is something that I should do way more often when I start practice sessions, and that's just doing a little bit of light stretching. I pull back here on my fingers just really lightly, and I learned this when I had tennis elbow once. I had to do these types of stretches for a long time, and I had people tell me, oh, you're gonna have this the rest of your life, so just get used to it, it's gonna hurt. And if I do these stretches on a regular basis, I don't have a problem with it anymore, so that's really great. So just taking a couple minutes to stretch things out and get things going can really go a long way. So don't discount that. Another one that I really like to do, and this one feels particularly good, again on this knuckle that I have that actually has arthritis, is this one. Just kind of rolling my fingers out, kind of kneading them. It feels really good, number one, and it gets things a little bit more loosened up. And it's kind of the first step to warming up for a practice session. And once you do this, just take some time to play something very simple that you know that you can play really well, whether it's chromatic skill, just some basic chords, just something that's easy to warm your hands up before you start getting into some heavier practicing. The next little category that you might want to consider is gear. And as we get older, we might need to change the gear that we play on, and that's okay. The number one factor in your gear as far as ease of playability is getting your guitar set up. If your action is really high, it is going to be a nightmare to play, and the older you get and the more challenges you have with your hands and things like that, the more that will become an issue. So if you haven't had your guitar in for a setup lately or ever, make sure to just go in and get that done. It can make your guitar play so much easier. The next thing that you might want to be aware of, and it's an easy change to make, but a lot of guitar players feel like it's cheating, is just the string gauge that you're using. On my electric, I usually use 10s, and I have a set of 10s and a set of 11s here. But if you're struggling with the tension of 10 gauge strings on your electric guitar, then don't be afraid to go down to 9 gauge strings. You're not cheating. It will take a little bit of adjustment with your playing, but there's nothing wrong with that. And if you're playing 13 gauge strings on a Martin guitar and you like that really beefy sound, you may have to make that sacrifice and go down to 12 gauge strings or even 11 gauge strings customized, but it can be a really big help. It's a lot easier on your hands. One thing that might help you, if you're an acoustic guitar player and you're having some really bad trouble with arthritis, one thing that you might want to consider that you might not want to hear is switching to electric guitar, because you can get a lot further down on the gauge of strings. You can go down to 9s, 8s. I've even heard of some people playing 7s. Super easy on your hands, very easy to play, and it might not be something that you have thought of before or even considered, but switching to electric can be a big help. And in the same kind of vein, you might have to switch guitars, so you might want to consider switching guitars to a shorter scale guitar, because shorter scale guitars have less tension on the strings, make it a little bit easier to play. It feels a little floppier and slinkier on the strings, but it is easier on your hands as well. For example, like if you're playing a Fender Strat, you might want to consider switching to something like a Fender Mustang that's shorter scale. One of my favorite acoustic players, Doc Watson, was playing into his 80s, and he said, I remember I saw a video of him playing, that as he got older, his fingernails got thinner when he did finger style guitar, so he had to switch to using plastic finger picks. So that's kind of another aspect of gear that can help you as you get older. Don't be afraid to experiment with new things. And even in that vein, kind of experimenting with slide guitar, putting your guitar in open tuning and playing with slide guitar could be super easy on your left hand or your fretting hand. And if you're having trouble with your right hand, the grip on your right hand, there are even some like ultra thick therapeutic picks that you can check out to see if you like them. A lot of times if people have arthritis or problems gripping things in their right hand or their picking hand, those kind of thicker picks are a lot easier to hold on to for them. The point here is don't be afraid to try new things, and you may have to switch your gear up, but it's not cheating. It's okay to do that. Let's get into some more technique aspects of things that you can implement into your practice time if you're having trouble with your hands, or even if you're like me, if you have a bad back. I'm sure I have some arthritis in my back because I've had some really serious back injuries. But one big thing you can do to help out with that is to get a good ergonomic chair to practice in. Like if I practice on a drum throne for 30 minutes, I am just done. So it's worth putting in the time and effort and the money to find a chair that works really well for you, and test it out sit in it for a good 30 minutes before you make the decision. All right, the next thing, and really the first thing as far as technique goes, is to get your guitar up a little bit higher. This is like the number one thing I tell people that are struggling with making chords, or, getting their hands to do what they want to and building that coordination. Get the guitar up a little bit higher with a footstool or with a strap. That's going to put the guitar in a lot better position to implement a lot of the other technique tips that we're going to go through here. So either lift it up with a footstool or get a strap to lift it up higher. And if you're like me, if you have trouble with your shoulder, if I play like a 30-minute gig, my shoulder just kills me. So one thing that you might want to check out is something called an X strap. It's a strap that's kind of like a harness for your guitar, so it distributes the weight evenly. And for somebody like me with a bad back, that is just a godsend. One thing that flows directly as far as technique goes from elevating your guitar is not kinking your wrist too far one way or the other. If you have your guitar elevated a little bit, it's going to be easier for you to not have to kink your wrist out this way or this way. And when you do that, it puts a lot of stress on here, and it can over time make things worse if you already have arthritis. So having it elevated and just being conscious to not kink your wrist this way or this way can go a long way. And if you don't do that, if you have your guitar elevated and then your wrist isn't kinked, it takes a lot less effort to get the strings pushed down to where you want them to be, especially if your guitar is set up nicely. One good mentality to get into is looking for alternate fingerings for chords and scales. Like say if your pinky gives you a lot of trouble or your index finger gives you a lot of trouble, you can kind of work around that. I'll show you some examples of that. Let's say you're playing an A chord and you just have trouble making it this way. What you can do is come up with alternate fingerings. Like I can switch these two fingers, or I can use my second, third, and fourth fingers, not even use my index finger. Same thing for the D chord. If I have trouble making it this way, I can switch these two fingers, or I can make it with these three fingers. I can totally eliminate my index finger. The important concept is there are options for you. For example, like if instead of playing this full F bar chord, that's really tough on your index finger, what you can do is just play like a real simple triad shape for an F, or this little mini bar, or throw your pinky in there. Or if you don't want to make a bar at all, but you still want the full chord, throw your thumb on the bottom. There are ways to do things. And if you want to, for example, play through a pentatonic scale, but you don't want to use your pinky, it's a little too tough for you to stretch. Instead of doing that, use your third finger. It's a little bit stronger. That's a great option. So just be aware of that as you learn new things on the guitar and experiment with which way works best for you in your own unique situation. The last little area I want to address is just practice habits. And there are just a few things here that you can do to kind of adjust if you're having trouble, getting through an entire long practice session with sore hands or something like that. The first thing is consistency. It's better to practice, 6 or 7 days a week for 15, 20, 30 minutes than it is to practice 2 or 3 times a week for hours, wearing out your hands, right? Also, if you are having trouble with your hands, if they get sore after 15 minutes, that's okay. Take breaks. Take an hour break, come back to it 15 more minutes, and disperse that throughout the day. If you need longer breaks, that's cool. Just practice, 15 or 20 minutes in the morning, 15 or 20 minutes in the evening, whatever it takes. As we get older, our bodies don't always perform the way that we want them to, but that doesn't mean we have to quit playing the guitar. We just have to be smart about it and adjust accordingly. So don't give up on your dreams of playing the guitar. Leave a comment below letting everyone here in the community know what other things have helped you through physical challenges throughout the years, whether it's arthritis or something else. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And a big shout out goes to the Guitar.io community for weighing in to help me put this video together. You guys are great. See you later.